A mysterious foal marked by forgotten technology shows up in a millionaire's arms in the dead of night. But what they discover upon examination could change everything we know about control and freedom. The silence of the early morning in Oakville was broken by the shrill sound of the automatic doors of the University Medical Center opening with unusual force. The cold white lights of the emergency room lobby reflected on a figure that completely contrasted with the hospital environment. An elegant man wearing designer clothes now dirty with soil and dark stains, carrying in his arms something no one would expect to see there. Camilla Ross, the night shift nurse, looked up from the medical chart she was organizing and widened her eyes at the scene. Edward Norton, the reclusive businessman known throughout the region for his fortune and eccentricity, was hurriedly entering the hospital carrying a small foal that was visibly trembling. "Please, someone needs to help," Edward shouted, his voice carrying genuine desperation. "He's very sick." The animal was breathing with difficulty, its large, dark eyes conveying a pain that seemed almost human. Even unconscious, its body still reacted to every sound in the Sioux environment, as if a part of its consciousness remained alert and restless. Camilla reacted instinctively, calling other staff members who were on duty. "Dr. Stevens, come quickly. We have a different kind of emergency." The on-call doctor appeared running and stopped abruptly at the scene. "Mr. Norton, what? That's an animal. This is a hospital for humans." "I know that," Edward retorted, clearly shaken. "But he's going to... I can't let him suffer like this. You have equipment, medications, please." Something in Edward's desperate tone made the team hesitate for only a moment before acting. Camilla, who had supplemented her training with studies in veterinary biology, took charge of the situation. "Let's take him to the smaller emergency room," she quickly decided. "Dr. Stevens, can you help me? We have basic sedatives that can stabilize him until we can get a veterinarian." While they accommodated the foal on an improvised stretcher, Camilla noticed something strange. At the base of the animal's neck, almost imperceptible, there was a small metallic implant. It wasn't a simple rural identification tag. It seemed like something much more sophisticated and technological. "Mr. Norton," she questioned, while checking the animal's vital signs, "where exactly did you find this foal?" Edward hesitated for a moment, avoiding direct eye contact. "In an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. I was inspecting some properties when I heard him neighing. I couldn't just leave him there." Dr. Stevens frowned. "But how did he get hurt? These marks on the muscles seem very specific, almost as if..." "As if what?" Edward interrupted, visibly tense, as if they were the result of extreme exhaustion and repetitive micro-injuries. Camilla completed, examining more closely. "Doctor, we need a veterinarian urgently. This animal was subjected to something very specific." At that moment, the foal reacted unexpectedly. Upon hearing the word warehouse in the conversation, it let out a sharp neigh and tried to rise from the stretcher, as if awakening from a deep torpor. Its eyes opened completely, demonstrating a lucidity that surprised everyone. "My God," whispered Dr. Stevens. "Is it responding to our words?" Edward approached the animal, which immediately calmed down upon seeing him. "Easy, boy. You're safe now." Camilla observed the interaction with growing curiosity. There was something much more complex happening there than a simple rescue. The implant, the specific reactions of the animal, Edward's evident nervousness, all of this formed a puzzle that she felt the need to solve. "I'm going to call Dr. Andrew Foster," she announced. "He's a veterinarian and has experience with unusual cases." While making the call, Camilla couldn't help but notice how Edward remained close to the foal, whispering reassuring words that seemed to have an almost magical effect on the animal. There was a connection between them that went beyond the simple chance of a nighttime rescue. What she didn't know was that this early morning would mark the beginning of a discovery that would change their lives forever, revealing secrets that some would prefer to keep buried in the shadows of science. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. Dr. Andrew Foster arrived at the hospital 40 minutes after Camilla's call, still wearing casual clothes and with messy hair. His expression changed drastically when he saw the Foal lying in the emergency room, connected to improvised monitors. "Camilla, when you said unusual case, I didn't imagine it would be this," he murmured, cautiously approaching the animal. "This is not a common injury." Edward, who had remained silent since the veterinarian's arrival, observed Andrew's every movement with visible anxiety. The Foal, in turn, kept its eyes fixed on the businessman, as if constantly seeking his approval or reassurance. "Dr. Andrew," Camilla called his attention to the implant, "what do you think of this?" Andrew examined the device with a magnifying glass, frowning more and more. "This is not standard veterinary equipment. It looks more like advanced research technology. Neural, perhaps." "Neural," Dr. Stevens repeated, intrigued. "Yes, devices used to monitor or influence brain activity in animals, but something like this would be extremely expensive and highly regulated." Andrew turned to Edward. "Mr. Norton, are you sure you just found this animal abandoned?" Edward hesitated again, his hands trembling slightly. It's complicated. I can't explain everything now, but I assure you, I didn't do anything wrong." At that moment, the Foal began to demonstrate even stranger behaviors. When Andrew mentioned the word regulated, the animal moved its head toward the door as if recognizing some danger. When Dr. Stevens said research, the Foal tapped its hoof against the stretcher 3 times in a clearly deliberate pattern. "It's responding to our words in an organized way," Camilla observed, fascinated and at the same time concerned. "This is not normal animal behavior." Andrew stepped back a bit, pulling Camilla aside. "I need to talk to you privately," he whispered. The two left the room, leaving Edward alone with the Foal and Dr. Stevens. In the hallway, Andrew couldn't hide his uneasiness. "Camilla, I've seen something like this before. A few years ago, when I was finishing my specialization, I heard rumors about an experimental project that involved neural communication with equines." "What kind of project?" "They called it Project Hypnos. It was a partnership between federal universities and private companies. The official goal was to develop more humane methods of training and communication with working horses." Camilla felt a shiver. "And what happened to this project?" "It was abruptly cancelled. I never knew exactly why, but there were rumors that the experiments had gotten out of control. Some said the animals were being manipulated in unethical ways." Back in the room, Edward seemed locked in a silent conversation with the Foal. Dr. Stevens observed, perplexed, how the businessman placed his hand near the animal's muzzle, which responded with gentle movements of its head. "Mr. Norton," Dr. Stevens broke the silence. "Have you had experience with this animal before finding it?" Edward looked at him with a distressed expression. "Doctor, if I tell you the truth, you won't believe it, and if you do believe it, you might be in danger." "Danger?" Camilla asked, returning to the room with Andrew. "What are you talking about?" Edward took a deep breath as if making a difficult decision. "This Foal, it wasn't simply abandoned, it escaped, and the people who controlled it, they'll want to recover it." Andrew and Camilla exchanged concerned looks. "Controlled how?" Andrew questioned. "Through this implant. It's part of a network of animals that can be remotely commanded." Edward ran his hand through his hair, visibly distressed. "I financed part of the initial research years ago. I thought it would be used for beneficial purposes, to improve the lives of working animals. But when I discovered what it was actually being used for, I tried to stop everything." "And did you succeed?" Camilla asked, already fearing the answer. "I thought so. The project was officially terminated, but apparently, it continued in clandestine operation." At that moment, the Foal began to agitate violently, neighing with increasing intensity. All the equipment connected to it began to emit alert sounds. "It's detecting something," Andrew observed, quickly checking the animal's vital signs. Edward approached the window and looked at the parking lot. His face paled. "They're here." "Who's here?" Dr. Stevens asked, alarmed. "The people who want to recover it. We have to get it out of here now." Camilla looked through the window and saw several unmarked vehicles surrounding the hospital. Men in dark clothes walked toward the main entrance with a determination that seemed anything but friendly. "My God," she whispered, "what have we done?" The sound of firm footsteps echoed through the hospital corridors, rapidly approaching the room where they were. Camilla felt her heart race as she watched Edward try to calm the foal, which continued to be agitated and neighing in patterns that seemed almost like a code. "Is there another exit?" Edward urgently asked Andrew, who knew the hospital well. "There's a service corridor that leads to the back parking lot," Andrew answered quickly. "But how are we going to transport the animal without drawing attention?" Dr. Stevens, who until then had been following the situation with growing skepticism, began to understand the gravity of the moment when he heard authoritative voices in the main corridor, clearly looking for something or someone. "Camilla," he whispered, "are you sure we should get involved in this?" Before she could answer, a firm voice was heard from outside the room. "We know the animal is here. Hand it over peacefully and no one will have problems." Edward closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering courage. "I can't let them take it back. You have no idea what they're capable of doing." "What exactly are they capable of?" Camilla asked, helping Andrew disconnect the equipment from the foal. "They've turned intelligent animals into biological machines, with no will of their own, no natural instincts, just executors of commands." Edward caressed the foal's muzzle, which instantly calmed down. "This one managed to break the conditioning. He's special." Andrew prepared a light sedation to facilitate transport. "How do you know all this?" "Because I saw the results. Before I distanced myself from the project, I witnessed tests where perfectly healthy horses were forced to execute tasks to the limit of exhaustion, without showing signs of resistance or self-preservation." Dr. Stevens swallowed hard. "That's inhumane. Exactly why I tried to cancel everything, but the other investors saw the commercial potential." Edward helped Andrew carry the sedated foal. "Imagine what unscrupulous people could do with completely obedient animals?" Camilla led the group through the emergency exit, constantly checking if they weren't being followed. The service corridor was deserted, but increasingly closer voices indicated that the unwanted visitors wouldn't give up easily. "Where are we going to take the animal?" Andrew asked as they walked hurriedly. "I know a place," Edward responded. "My property on the outskirts has a private veterinary clinic. We'll be temporarily safe there." When they reached the back parking lot, Camilla noticed that two men in dark clothes were standing guard near the cars. It was impossible to leave without being seen. "We have a problem," she whispered. Andrew had an idea. "There's a spare ambulance in the underground garage. If we can get there—" "That would be theft," Dr. Stevens protested, although his voice demonstrated more concern than conviction. "Dr. Stevens," Edward turned to him with a serious expression, "if they recover this animal, it won't just be him that suffers. There's an entire network of animals waiting to be activated, and when that happens, it will be too late for any of us to do anything." The foal, even sedated, began to emit low and rhythmic sounds. Camilla realized there was a specific pattern in the neighs. "He's trying to communicate with us," she observed, amazed. Edward nodded gravely. "He knows he's in danger, and he knows that we are too." Dr. Stevens made a sudden decision. "All right, let's get the ambulance. But after that, I want complete explanations about everything." As they headed to the underground garage, through the less busy corridors of the hospital, Camilla couldn't get the image of the foal's intelligent eyes out of her mind. There was something deeply disturbing about the idea that this creature had been deprived of its own will. "Edward," she asked, as they descended the stairs, "how many animals are involved in this network?" "When I left the project, there were about 20, but that was 3 years ago. It could be much more now." Andrew stopped abruptly. 20 conditioned horses? To do what exactly?" Edward hesitated before answering. "Clandestine transport, terrain reconnaissance, tasks that humans or conventional vehicles couldn't execute without raising suspicions." The garage was silent and poorly lit. The ambulance was parked in the farthest corner, away from the main elevators. It seemed they would have a chance to escape unnoticed. But when Edward opened the back door of the ambulance to accommodate, The foal, the animal, suddenly awoke from sedation and began to neigh frantically, as if alerting about imminent danger. "He's trying to warn us about something," Camilla realized. It was then that they heard the unmistakable sound of elevators descending toward the garage. They had been discovered. The sound of approaching elevators made everyone freeze for a moment. Edward quickly accommodated the foal in the ambulance, while Andrew ran to the driver's seat. Camilla and Dr. Stevens got in the back, keeping the animal calm with soft words. "Wait!" a female voice echoed through the garage before they could leave. "Don't leave yet!" A woman of approximately 40, brown hair tied in a ponytail and wearing a researcher's lab coat, ran toward the ambulance. Edward recognized her immediately, and his face lit up with a mixture of surprise and relief. "Patricia, what are you doing here?" "Edward, when I heard you were at the hospital with an injured animal, I imagined it might be related to the project." Dr. Patricia Lane approached the ambulance, observing the foal with expert eyes. "My God, is it really one of the hypno specimens?" Camilla and Andrew looked at each other, confused. "You know each other?" Andrew asked. "Dr. Patricia was one of the original developers of the technology," Edward explained quickly. "She stepped away when we discovered the true intentions behind the project." Patricia quickly examined the implant on the foal's neck. "This model is more advanced than the ones we initially developed. They continued perfecting the technology." Dr. Stevens interrupted. "We need to leave now. There are people looking for this animal." "I know, that's why I came to warn you." Patricia opened her bag and took out a small electronic device. "This is a signal blocker. It can temporarily interfere with the implant, making tracking more difficult." The sound of elevators grew closer. Patricia activated the device, and immediately the foal seemed calmer, as if a weight had been lifted from its back. "It works," Edward observed, amazed. "He seems freer." "It's temporary," Patricia warned, getting into the ambulance. "We have maybe 2 hours before the signal stabilizes again. We need to use this time wisely." Andrew started the ambulance and began driving toward the garage. Exit. "Where are we going?" "I know a safe place," Patricia answered. "An old university research clinic, officially deactivated but still equipped. There we can study the implant without interference." As they left the hospital, Camilla noticed that the men in dark clothes were running toward the main building, apparently following a false lead. The signal blocker was working. "Dr. Patricia," Camilla asked during the journey, "what exactly did you create in Project Hypnos?" Patricia sighed deeply. "Initially, we developed a non-invasive neural interface to improve communication between humans and equines. The idea was to revolutionize the training and care of therapy and working horses." "But something went wrong?" Andrew questioned. "Not exactly wrong. It went too right." Patricia gently caressed the foal. "We discovered that we could not only communicate with the animals, but also directly influence their behavior. When we realized the ethical implications, Edward and I tried to shut down the project." Edward added, "But other investors saw the military and commercial potential. They wanted to transform the technology into a tool of total control." "And did they succeed?" Dr. Stevens asked, fearing the answer. "Apparently, yes," Patricia responded with sadness. "This implant is much more sophisticated than our original prototypes. They developed an integrated network that allows centralized control of multiple animals simultaneously." The ambulance arrived at a remote area of the university campus, where a low, discreet building was hidden among dense trees. Patricia used a magnetic card to open the gates, revealing that she still had access to the place. "Welcome to the laboratory that should have remained just a dream," she said melancholically. Inside the facility, state-of-the-art equipment contrasted with the apparently abandoned environment. Patricia activated the systems while the others accommodated the foal in an area specifically prepared for large animals. "Impressive," Andrew murmured, observing the equipment. "This must be worth millions." "Was worth," Patricia corrected. "After the project was officially cancelled, I kept this laboratory on standby, using my own resources. I had hope of one day being able to continue the research ethically." Camilla observed the foal, which seemed more relaxed in that environment. "He likes this place." "He probably recognizes the equipment," Edward observed. If he was conditioned, here or in a similar laboratory, he must have associated memories. Patricia connected some non-invasive sensors to the animal and activated a monitor that began to display brainwave patterns. What they saw on the screen left everyone silent. "This is impossible," Patricia whispered. "What is it?" Camilla asked, anxiously. "These neural patterns, he's not just resisting external control, he's actively rewriting the implant's protocols." Edward approached the monitor, incredulous. "Are you saying he's hacking his own control system?" "More than that," Patricia answered, her eyes shining with a mixture of admiration and concern. "He's freeing himself. And if my analysis is correct, he might be helping other animals in the network to do the same. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue." The next few hours in the secret laboratory revealed discoveries that none of them were prepared to face. Patricia worked intensively on the equipment, decoding the signals that the Foal's implant emitted and received, while Camilla constantly monitored the physical state of the animal. "This is extraordinary," Patricia murmured, observing the data that appeared on multiple screens. "His neural system is operating at levels we didn't think were possible for equines." Andrew approached the monitors, trying to understand the complex graphs. "What exactly are we seeing?" "Bidirectional communication," Edward answered, recognizing some patterns from his days working on the original project. "He's not just receiving commands, he's sending his own signals through the network." Dr. Stevens, who had remained skeptical during much of the journey, now observed everything with growing fascination. It's as if he had developed his own language within the system. Camilla noticed that the Foal reacted differently to each new discovery they made. When Patricia mentioned network, he moved his ears in a specific way. When they talked about other animals, he neighed softly as if confirming something. "Patricia," Camilla called, "what if he understands exactly what we're saying?" "Theoretically, it's possible. The implant not only controls behavior, it can also amplify existing cognitive capabilities." Patricia turned to the Foal, looking directly into his eyes. "You can understand us, can't you?" To everyone's surprise, the Foal nodded once, in a clear and deliberate manner. "My God," Dr. Stevens whispered. He responded. Edward approached, the animal gently touching its neck. "How many others like you exist?" The Foal tapped his hoof on the floor 16 times, paused, and tapped 2 more times. 18, Camilla counted, feeling a shiver. "He's saying there are 18 animals in the network." Patricia quickly adjusted the equipment to capture signals from other transmitters. In a few minutes, the screens began to show points of light scattered across an area that covered several neighboring cities. "All active," she confirmed, her voice heavy with concern, "and all sending signals of elevated stress." "Stress?" Andrew asked. "They're being forced to execute tasks beyond their natural capacity," Edward explained grimly. "And by the pattern of the signals, it seems the activity is intensifying." At that moment, the equipment began to emit alerts. Patricia quickly checked the data and turned pale. "They've discovered our location. Someone is trying to track the blocker's signal." The Foal immediately became agitated, neighing in a way that clearly indicated danger. Camilla instinctively positioned herself close to him, offering comfort. "We need to move again," Edward said, but Patricia interrupted him. "No, this time we can't just run." She turned to the monitors, typing rapidly. "If what we discovered is correct, this Foal is the key to freeing all the other animals in the network." "What do you mean?" Andrew asked. "He developed a liberation code, a sequence of signals that can break the conditioning of the other animals. But he needs to be close enough to transmit directly." Dr. Stevens frowned. "Are you suggesting we take him to where the others are?" "Not just suggesting," Patricia responded determinedly. "It's our only chance to stop this before it's too late." Edward looked at the Foal, which stared back at him with eyes that seemed almost human in their intensity. "And if we don't succeed, if they recover all the animals, then they'll have an undetectable biological weapon," Patricia responded gravely. 18 conditioned horses can transport anything anywhere without raising suspicions. They can access areas where humans or vehicles could never enter. Camilla felt the weight of responsibility. Where are the other animals concentrated? Patricia checked the signal map. Most are on a rural property about 50 miles from here. It seems to be an isolated farm, perfect for clandestine operations. I know that place, Edward said suddenly. It's where we used to do the original field tests. If it's still being used, then what? Andrew asked impatiently. Then there's much more happening there than just animal conditioning. Edward took a deep breath. 3 years ago, when I left the project, I discovered they were planning to use that facility as an operations center for something much bigger. The foal began to emit low and rhythmic sounds, which Patricia recognized as a specific communication pattern. He's trying to contact the others, she realized. Even with the blocker active, he manages to send limited signals. And is that good or bad? Dr. Stevens asked. Both, Edward answered, observing the growing reactions on the monitors. Good, because he might be preparing the others for liberation. Bad because it's also alerting whoever controls the system that we have a defective animal. The laboratory lights flickered briefly, indicating that someone was trying to cut the building's power. They're here, Camilla murmured, hearing the distant sound of vehicles approaching. Patricia made a quick choice, copying all the data to a portable device. We're going to need all of this if we want to have a chance of success. The foal stood up, clearly prepared to leave. His eyes conveyed a determination that moved all those present. He knows what he needs to do, Edward observed with admiration and sadness, and he knows the risks. The escape from the laboratory was more dramatic than any of them had imagined. Patricia knew a secret exit through the back of the building, which led directly to a forested area. While they carried the essential equipment and helped the foal walk, they could hear voices and footsteps approaching the main entrance. This way, Patricia whispered, guiding the group through an almost invisible trail between the trees. This exit was designed exactly for situations like this. The foal followed without resistance, but Camilla noticed that he occasionally stopped and turned his head, as if hearing something that the humans couldn't perceive. He's receiving signals from the other animals, Edward observed. Even with the blocker active, the connection wasn't completely interrupted. They reached a secondary road where Patricia had left her research vehicle, a van adapted with mobile equipment. It was perfect for transporting the foal and still maintaining communication with the necessary technologies. How much time do we have until they reach the farm? Andrew asked while they accommodated the animal in the back of the van. About an hour, Edward answered, consulting an old GPS that would avoid digital tracking. But we can't simply arrive and hope for the best. They'll be waiting for us. Dr. Stevens, who had become the most reluctant but also most determined member of the group, asked a crucial question. And if we can't free all the animals, if there's resistance? Then we'll try to save as many as we can, Camilla answered with conviction, but we can't let them continue suffering. During the journey, Patricia continued monitoring the network signals through portable equipment. What she discovered left her even more concerned. The neural activity of all the animals is increasing drastically, she reported. It's as if they're being prepared for a large operation. What kind of operation? Andrew questioned. Edward looked out the window, lost in dark thoughts. When I left the project, I learned they were planning to use the conditioned animals to transport ammo-sensitive materials across borders and protected areas. Horses don't arouse suspicion like vehicles or people. Sensitive materials? Dr. Stevens asked, though he feared the answer. Substances that shouldn't circulate freely, experimental equipment, anything that needed to be moved without official documentation. The foal, which had remained relatively calm during the conversation, began to get agitated as they approached the rural area where the farm was located. His neighs became more frequent and seemed to follow a specific pattern. He's communicating with the others, Patricia confirmed, observing activity spikes on her monitors, and they're responding. Camilla placed her hand gently on the foals. Connect. You're trying to prepare them, aren't you? The animal looked directly into her eyes and nodded once, confirming. Amazing, Dr. Stevens murmured. He has a plan. When they reached the vicinity of the property, they stopped on a hill that offered a panoramic view of the farm. What they saw confirmed their worst fears. The facility was much larger and more organized than they expected. "That's not an ordinary farm," Andrew observed through binoculars. "There are at least 6 different buildings, communication antennas, and, my God, how many people are working there?" Edward took the binoculars and examined carefully. There must be at least 20 visible staff members. And those aren't ordinary horse handlers. They're dressed and moving like military personnel. Patricia connected a more powerful interception equipment. "I can detect signals from at least 15 different animals at this location, and all are in a state of extreme activation." "Activation for what?" Camilla asked, fearing the answer. "If my analysis is correct, for a mission that will happen in the next few hours." The foal began to show evident signs of distress, trying to leave the van and head toward the farm. His neighs became more urgent, almost desperate. "He knows the others are in immediate danger," Edward interpreted. "We don't have much time, Doctor." Stevens asked the question everyone was avoiding. "How are 5 people and a horse going to infiltrate a military operation to rescue 15 conditioned animals?" "6 people," a familiar voice corrected from behind them. Everyone turned to see Sheriff Ryan Mitchell emerging from the vegetation, accompanied by 2 police officers in civilian clothes. "Sheriff!" Camilla exclaimed, relieved and surprised. "How did you find us?" "I've been following the trails since the hospital. When I discovered there was a clandestine operation involving animal mistreatment, I decided to investigate on my own." Ryan looked at the farm through the binoculars. "And from what I'm seeing, you're going to need official help." Edward hesitated. "Sheriff, this is much more complicated than it seems. Mr. Norton, I've already discovered that there's an unauthorized military project using animals for illegal activities. That's enough for a police intervention." Patricia showed the data on her equipment to Ryan. "Sheriff, these animals aren't just victims. They're potential biological weapons. If we don't free them today, they might be used for activities that will affect many more people." Ryan studied the data for a few minutes, his expression becoming increasingly serious. "How many animals do we need to evacuate?" 15, besides this one we already have," Andrew answered. "And how much time do we have?" The foal began to neigh with increasing intensity, as if answering the question. Patricia quickly checked her equipment. "By the neural signals, at most 2 hours before they're taken to another location." Ryan made a quick decision. "Then let's make this work. But we do it my way, planned, coordinated, and without dangerous improvisations." Sheriff Ryan's plan was both simple and risky. Create a distraction at the main entrance of the farm, while a smaller team infiltrated from the back to free the animals. The foal would be crucial. He would need to be close enough to the others to transmit the liberation signals he had developed. "Remember," Patricia warned as she checked the equipment one last time, "once the blocker is deactivated, he'll be able to communicate with all the others simultaneously, but he'll also become traceable again." Camilla adjusted her backpack with emergency veterinary supplies. "And if some of the other animals are too conditioned to respond to the liberation signals?" "Then we improvise," Edward answered, stroking the foal's neck. "He'll show us what to do." The first phase of the plan worked perfectly. Ryan and his officers presented themselves at the main entrance of the farm with a search and seizure warrant based on reports of animal mistreatment. The commotion created allowed Edward, Camilla, Andrew, and Patricia, accompanied by the foal, to approach the stables from the back of the property. What they found left them silent for several moments. In modern and highly technological stables, 15 horses remained motionless in their stalls, connected to sophisticated equipment through implants similar to the foal they had saved. Their eyes, which should shine with natural life and curiosity, seemed glazed and distant. "My God," Andrew whispered, "they look empty." The foal immediately became agitated upon seeing the other animals, neighing with a specific pattern that Patricia recognized as the liberation code. Some of the horses began to move their ears, demonstrating that there was still consciousness behind the conditioning. "It's working," Edward observed hopefully. "Some are responding." Patricia deactivated the signal blocker, allowing the foal to transmit at full strength. The effect was immediate and dramatic. All 15 horses began to move, shaking their heads as if awakening from a long dream. "It worked," Camilla exclaimed, beginning to open the stalls. "They're waking up." But their joy was short-lived. Alarms began to sound throughout the facility, and voices shouted urgent commands in various directions. The liberation of the animals had activated automatic security systems. "We need to leave here now," Andrew urged, helping to guide the confused horses toward the stable exit. It was then that they discovered an unexpected problem. Not all the horses were responding the same way. 3 of them, visibly larger and more muscular than the others, remained immobile despite the Foal's signals. "What's wrong with these?" Camilla asked, trying to approach one of them. Patricia quickly checked her equipment. "Their implants are different, a more advanced generation. The conditioning is much deeper." The Foal approached the 3 resistant horses, touching each one with his muzzle and emitting soft, complex sounds. Gradually, their eyes began to show signs of consciousness, but they still remained physically immobilized. "They want to come with us, but they can't break the conditioning on their own," Edward interpreted. "The Foal will have to do something more drastic." At that moment, armed men appeared at the entrance to the stables. "Stop where you are. Return the animals to their stalls." Ryan appeared behind the armed men with his officers. "Lower your weapons. This is an official police operation." The confusion that followed allowed the group to continue evacuating the horses. 12 of the 15 animals were already free and following the Foal toward the transport vehicles that Ryan had provided. But the 3 horses with advanced conditioning remained trapped. It was then that the Foal did something extraordinary. He positioned himself in the center of the 3 immobilized horses and began to emit a sequence of sounds that none of them had heard before. Not common neighs, but something that seemed almost like music, with complex tonalities and rhythms. "What is he doing?" Andrew asked, fascinated. "He's overwriting the control system," Patricia answered, observing extraordinary data on her portable equipment. "He's developed a completely new liberation protocol." The 3 horses began to tremble, their muscles contracting and relaxing in visible waves. It was as if they were internally fighting against the conditioning. The Foal continued his liberation song, approaching each one individually. "It's working," Camilla observed emotionally, seeing life returning to the animal's eyes. Finally, the 3 horses freed themselves simultaneously, vigorously shaking their heads, as if expelling something unpleasant from their minds. The Foal neighed triumphantly, a sound full of joy and relief. "All 16!" Edward shouted. "We managed to save all of them." But their celebration was interrupted by a disturbing discovery. Patricia, who continued monitoring the network signals, detected something alarming. "There are still active signals," she announced, confused. "There are more connected animals, but they're not on this farm." Ryan approached, having controlled the situation with the armed men. "How many more?" "At least 20, Patricia answered, checking and rechecking the data, "and they're spread over a much larger area than we imagined." Edward felt his stomach sink. "The network is much bigger than we thought. This farm was just one of the operation points." The Foal, as if understanding the gravity of the discovery, began to emit urgent alarm sounds. His eyes turned to the horizon in the direction where apparently others of his kind still awaited liberation. "He knows where they are," Camilla realized, "and he won't rest until all of them are free." Dr. Stevens, who had helped coordinate the transport of the liberated animals, asked the question everyone feared. If there are at least 20 animals still in the network, and if they're spread across various locations, how are we going to find all of them in time? It was then that the Foal did something that surprised even Patricia. He approached the other liberated horses and began to communicate with them through complex sounds. One by one, they began to respond, creating a symphony of equine communication that was both beautiful and mysterious. "They're sharing information," Edward realized in wonder. "Each of them knows the location of other animals in the network." Patricia quickly connected her equipment to capture and translate the communications between the horses. What they discovered would change everything they thought they knew about the project and its true extent. The data that Patricia managed to decode from the communication between the horses revealed a truth that left everyone in a state of shock. The network didn't involve just 36 animals. There were more than 100 horses connected in an area that spanned 3 different states. "This isn't an experimental project that got out of control," Patricia murmured, observing the digital maps that showed activity points spread across hundreds of miles. "It's an industrial operation." Ryan, who was coordinating the evacuation of the liberated animals, stopped upon hearing the discovery. Industrial for what? Edward, who had remained silent while processing the implications, finally spoke. To create the first completely undetectable clandestine transport network. Horses can cross borders, protected areas, and private properties without raising suspicions. But transport what? Dr. Stevens asked, although he feared the answer. It was the Foal who provided the answer in an unexpected way. He headed to a part of the stables they hadn't explored and began to dig at the floor with his hooves, revealing a partially buried secret entrance. He knew there was something there, Camilla observed, marveling at the animal's intelligence. Andrew helped to excavate, revealing a small underground chamber that contained dozens of small electronic devices, unidentified chemical substances in sealed containers, and documents with codes that none of them could decipher. Espionage equipment. Ryan identified some of the devices, and these substances, I'll need a specialized team to identify them safely. Patricia quickly analyzed the documents. These codes correspond to the locations the horses identified. Each animal in the network was designated to transport specific materials to predetermined locations. An industrial espionage network, Edward concluded bitterly, using innocent animals as invisible mules. The Foal approached Camilla and began to do something she had never seen. He appeared to be crying. Real tears flowed from his eyes while he emitted low, melancholic sounds. He's suffering for the others who are still trapped, she realized, gently caressing his neck. He knows there are many more needing help. It was then that Patricia made the most surprising discovery of all. While analyzing the communication patterns the Foal had used to free the other horses, she noticed something extraordinary in the data. "Edward, come see this," she called urgently. "The liberation code he developed, it's not just breaking the conditioning, it's spreading." "What do you mean spreading?" Andrew asked. "Each horse we freed has become a transmitter of the code, and the signals are reaching other animals in the network hundreds of miles away." Patricia's equipment began to show frantic activity at dozens of points scattered across the map. Liberation signals spread like waves, from one location to another, creating a chain reaction that no one had predicted. He planned this from the beginning, Edward realized, looking at the Foal with total admiration. He wasn't just trying to save himself or save the others from this farm. He developed a liberation virus that would spread throughout the entire network. Camilla embraced the Foal's neck, feeling overwhelming emotion. "You're a hero, a true hero." Ryan received a call on his radio. "Sheriff, we're receiving reports of horses abandoning properties in at least 15 different counties. They seem to be walking in specific directions." "They're coming here," Dr. Stevens realized, observing the behavior of the liberated horses. "They know this is a safe place." During the next 6 hours, that's exactly what happened. Horses arrived from all directions, some alone, others in small groups, all carrying devices similar to those they had found in the underground chamber. Each animal that arrived brought additional evidence of the extent of the clandestine operation. By the end of the day, 103 horses had gathered at the farm, all free from artificial conditioning and demonstrating extraordinary levels of intelligence and cooperation. The original Foal remained as the natural leader of the group, coordinating activities and consoling the more traumatized animals. "I've never seen anything like it," Andrew admitted, observing how the horses interacted with each other with almost human complexity. "It's as if they've developed their own society." Patricia was finalizing her scientific reports, documenting every aspect of the discovery. "This documentation will revolutionize our understanding of animal intelligence and research ethics. But more importantly, it will ensure that something like this never happens again." Edward, who had carried the weight of guilt since he funded the original project, finally found peace seeing all the animals free and safe. "They forgave me," he told Camilla, observing how several horses approached him without fear, "even after everything they suffered because of the project I helped create." "They know you saved them," Camilla responded, "and most importantly, they saved each other." 3 months later, the farm had been transformed into an official sanctuary for the liberated horses, under constant veterinary supervision and with government support. The animals lived freely, demonstrating daily levels of intelligence and social organization that fascinated researchers from around the world. The foal, whom Camilla had affectionately named Hope, became not just the leader of the group but also an international symbol of resistance and liberation. His story inspired changes in animal research legislation and led to the development of much more rigorous ethical protocols. Dr. Stevens left his position at the hospital to dedicate himself entirely to caring for the horses at the sanctuary. Andrew specialized in behavioral therapy for traumatized animals. Patricia resumed her research, but now focused exclusively on technologies that benefit animals without compromising their autonomy. Edward used his fortune to ensure that the sanctuary would operate in perpetuity, and Ryan coordinated a task force that completely dismantled the industrial espionage network, bringing those responsible to justice. Camilla, who had found her true calling on that fateful early morning at the hospital, became the medical director of the sanctuary. Every day she observed Hope interact with the other horses, communicating through complex sounds and gestures that seemed to form their own language. On the last afternoon of summer, while watching the sunset from the sanctuary's porch, Camilla saw Hope approach. The horse looked her in the eyes, and for the first time since they had met, did something completely unexpected. He smiled, a genuine, unmistakable smile, full of gratitude and joy. In that moment, she knew that all the difficulties, all the risks, and all the challenges had been worth it. They hadn't just saved the horses, they had discovered that intelligence, compassion, and determination can transcend the barriers between species, creating bonds of understanding and love that transform the world. And so, in a small town in St. Oregon, a story that began with desperation and fear, transformed into a testimony to the power of unity and the possibility of redemption that exists in all living beings. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us which city you're watching from,